Hello and a very good day to all of you. As a Rasika, I would like to speak my mind, and the first question that I would like to answer is about my eligibility to speak on the subject of music and Bhakti. Well, I've had many decades of listening to some of the finest music, some of the finest compositions by our Vagekaras, brought to the fore by some of the finest and most innovative musicians that have ever walked on this planet. I occasionally listen to not so great music, which actually puts the great music in beautiful, happy contrast. I've never had any problems listening to any age group or gender, and I've always been open to listening to people who are in the beginning stages of their musical career and those who have reached a very advanced stage of excellence. And I've enjoyed all of them across the board. Above all, I believe I'm one of the truest and sincerest lovers of the world's greatest musical form. So that alone gives me the right to say a few words on this topic of Bhakti and music and what I feel about music, Carnatic music as it exists today. So where do Bhakti and music meet? Basically, Bhakti provides the material, source material, and music carries it to the masses. The amount of material that we got through the ages from the starting of the Bhakti movement, which inspired others to produce high quality musical compositions. Now that forms such a huge database that we really are extremely lucky to have that as a permanent source of inspiration for all of us. Musical form of communicating things to people has always been far more effective than the written form or a pamphlet or a theoretical lecture from the podium. So that is why music and Bhakti go together, especially so in the case of our Carnatic music. Because other than just plain classical stuff, even folk music and romantic ideas have been wonderfully allowed to be incorporated purely because the driving force has been a question of devotion to the Supreme. And when that is the basis, anything that one sings becomes acceptable and understandable and satisfying to the soul of the listener. Thus, Bhakti and music, when they are together, they give an additional emotional and a spiritual connection between the artists performing and the audience, and it evokes such wonderful imagery that the whole thing transforms into a beautiful spiritual experience where the distinction between the performers and the audience slowly fades away, so that the whole sabha full of rasikas and the performers elevates itself to a high level of spiritual realization. In other words, Bhakti combined with music helps us go a little further down the path towards the realization of the Supreme Being, which is what our scriptures constantly tell us to do. And what better proof than Narayana himself saying that Naham vasami vaikunte yoginam hridayana cha madbhaktya atara gayanti tatra tishtami Narada. He told Narada that all he wants is a musical approach to reaching him, and he'll be always near at hand. In other words, we are probably the most blessed amongst all the musical forms in the world because we already have such a huge base of wonderful information to use to convey musical thoughts. In other words, in this path towards realizing the Supreme, or at least approaching towards that, how do music and musicians help us? Musicians, once they internalize the essence of the lyrics of those wonderful compositions set by the great Vagekaras, and that has been expounded so beautifully by a huge number of great artists that have been blessing us with their innovative music over the last couple of centuries, and the wonderful ragas in which they have set all this music. Now, Once this is internalized by the performing artists on the stage, and it is presented with a genuine sense of bhakti and bhava, what happens is the artists on the stage immerse themselves fully in the composition and in the greatness of the devotional content, and thereby they will be able to reach out to the audience with a total sincerity and commitment of purpose. And in the process, everybody rises to a higher level of spiritual experience. In other words, what does a Rasika like me want when one goes to a concert? I want such quality, good quality music. I want evidence of teamwork amongst the people on the stage, and I'm so happy to be able to say that in the last many years, a whole lot of youngsters who are on the stage show this wonderful ability to get along with the accompanists of all types, and it's so wonderful to see that adds so much more to the overall effect on the audience. I would like a happy mix of all components of our music, such as different ragas, ranjaga ragas and heavy ragas, a composition that are like varnams and kritis and light tukadas, different languages, in not just the South Indian languages we are blessed to have so many compositions in, but also abhangs in Marathi or bhajans of Meera in Bhojpuri or Hindi, and so on and so forth. All this adds to the overall corpus of wonderful musical experience, musical body that exists and which we can partake of time and time again. In the process, if the artists on the stage are able to interact with the audience, nothing like it, because that really gets the artist to get involved in the whole process of enjoying the music and makes it worthwhile for the artists to try and give of their best. Naturally, all this requires a lot of manodharma, but importantly, a lot of respect for the legacy left behind for us by the Vagekaras and those great artists who have regaled us over the ages. Innovation is a very important part of it, and that is what all those great artists have shown us over the last century or two. But I would like to please point out that innovation includes things like new prayogas and new phrases, new ragas, explaining old ragas in new ways, introducing a new instrument like mandolin Srinivas did just as a kid of 10 or 11 in the 80s, and he elevated a whole generation of Carnatic music fans and artists to a completely different level of enjoyment. Now that is real innovation. Collaborating with other artists from various other art forms or various other musical forms of the world, that is innovation. Conducting thematic concerts and, of course, as I said earlier, interacting with the audience in a sort of a two-way communications setup that really brings everybody together. Now, those are all great examples of innovation, and we see a lot of this today, and it's so gratifying to see this. But what is irritating and what is very disturbing is that very often innovation is used as a simple and very selfish means for promotion of oneself. Now, that is not our music's idea, because our music is far too refined for somebody to go and score points at the expense of others, by being disrespectful to the great composers, or even trying to put one over the fellow artists on the stage, or somebody who's not on the stage trying to say that, look, I can sing this raga better than so and so, or things like that. I think those are all evidences of immaturity, just as mindless experimentation is. Experimentation, such as with the format of the concert, is nothing other than showing or showcasing how different you are. And being different doesn't necessarily mean being better. Being different can sometimes also prove that you fail to reach the audience. And it may be that at the moment it may not be visible, but over a period of time, most good Rasikas, and most of us are in that good Rasika bracket, will realize and be able to sift the chaff from the substance. And those artists who do not respect these aspects of lack of innovation will perish. I have no doubt about that. So my request to all of you musicians performing out there is just to tell you that I and the millions of Rasikas around you are all beholden to you for the amount of vidvat that you all put in to reach a certain level of excellence, and you enthrall us with your performances. Because your music gives us peace, spirituality, and a great level of satisfaction and happiness that lasts long after the concert is over. But please remember also that you exist because of us and for us alone. An Olympic opening ceremony may or may not call a Carnatic music team to come and perform. If it does, I'll be the happiest. But even though you may get the applause, it will not be the kind of sincere applause that a small body of Rasikas will give you in a small sabha, because that will come from their heart. This will be more out of goodness, more out of a societal compulsion that people will applaud. So please remember that we Rasikas are your life just as you are our lives. So in a way, to improve your music and showcase your talent, which I find in great abundance these days, but not to try and put one over the other, over your fellow artists, or to try and prove that you are doing something exceptionally different. So please do not take away from the inherent goodness by your experimentation. If you want to do good by being inclusive in who you teach and who you encourage and who you take your music to, do it. This is a most wonderful characteristic, but it doesn't have to be done with a lot of noise. It should be done actually quietly, and people will notice, and people will throng to such concerts, and people will come and take guidance from you if you do that. But it doesn't have to be done by breaking tradition and trying to create a lot of controversy, because controversy does get attention, but in the end, controversy kills. So in summary, I would like to say that after decades of listening to Carnatic music and seeing what's happening all around me, one thing is certain, one thing stands out, that the future of our Carnatic music, despite all the funny controversies that we keep occasionally getting into, the future of our Carnatic music and the future of Carnatic musicians and that of the Rasika are all extremely safe. There's a huge crop of young talent that has come up in the last few years, and they are there to take the Carnatic music corpus to the next many generations, and I'm sure Carnatic music will be the most heard music for centuries to come. Rasikas, and a whole lot of them, are becoming more and more discerning and more demanding even in terms of what they want, and that will push the artists to perform better and better and provide much more quality of good music in terms of how they handle the ragas, how they handle the compositions, rather than how they simply go around changing formats. I think this is a message that needs to be understood by everybody, from the musician side as well as from the side of the Rasikas. That is what we as Rasikas should strive for. That is what musicians as a body of providers of this wonderful entertainment should strive for. Because music and Rasikas do not discriminate among people in terms of who you are, what your background is, where you come from, whether you know the language well or not. No, all that matters is the approach, the intention to the music. As long as you stick to tradition, and to the extent that tradition allows you to flourish, innovate as much as you can, but do not denigrate our corpus of beautiful music by doing mindless experimentation, as I keep repeating myself. Because a body of Rasikas will always be there to support you if you decide to give good, clean Carnatic music And that is all that a Rasika wants by visiting a concert. Otherwise, there is not much to differentiate between us as human beings and the rest of the animal kingdom. As the sloka says, Sahitya Sangeeta Kala Vihinaha, those who are not interested in providing or listening to good music and other forms of art, they are nothing more than Sakshat Pashuhu, Pucha Vishana Vihinaha, without a tail and a horn, but very similar to the rest of the animal kingdom. Trinanna Khadannapi Jivamanaha, they don't eat grass, such people, which Tat Bhagyadeha Paraman Pashuna, because that is a blessing for the other members of the animal kingdom, that these people who are not very different from them in terms of their inability to understand good quality art and music, but they don't eat grass, leave it for the others. That's all there is. And big namaskaram to everyone. And I sincerely hope that you as a performer of music and you as a listener, as a Rasika, all flourish and enjoy and propagate this wonderful music that has been bestowed to us, which is one of our greatest legacies. Thank you all.